All right, welcome back to Wicked Smart Golf, aka Wicked Smat. This is your host, Michael Leonard, and this podcast is committed to helping you play better golf without changing your swing. Got a really fun guest today. Gary Christian has an amazing story. One of the oldest rookies on the PGA Tour, very inspiring. Got into broadcasting and motivational speaking now. So, looking forward to hearing more about your journey. Gary, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much, Michael. Really excited to talk to you today.
Absolutely. I appreciate you reaching out. I had just started to see some of your stuff on some other podcasts and felt like this was an amazing fit for the show because we try and inject a lot of personal development and success stuff in here. So you have a pretty cool story. So let's rewind a little bit. What got you obsessed with the game?
Well, I think like most golfers, it was a family member. My dad was a mad keen golfer, and we were fortunate. We had a field at the back of our house, and one day he came back from a rummage sale with some clubs, and I was the earliest form of Bryson DeChambeau. He took a hacksaw, and my putter was the same length as my driver, and he said, "There you go, you got four clubs." So it's actually one of my proudest things that I have at home. I still have those clubs in a shadow box that right next to a picture of me playing golf with Tiger Woods. So it's kind of shows you where you started and where you kind of finished and the journey it was. So it was two hickory clubs and one, I don't know what it was, maybe a niblick or something, and then some very modern putter for the day. So it was it's always good to just sort of remind yourself of your journey.
That's a great start right there. I actually have a picture of myself when I played high school golf. I was 4'10" when I went into high school. I was kind of short and fat. No other sport wanted me, and I hit it about 180 yards at best. And I shot 124 in my first tournament freshman year. So not a prodigy by any means. And then I have a picture of me at Q school. So I kind of remind myself of the journey and to appreciate it. So that's really cool that you have those clubs still. And it sounds like you had fond memories of the game from an early age.
Yeah, I really did. Yeah, as I said, my dad was absolutely an avid golfer, and so just from an early age, we'd go out the back in the field with these clubs, and I remember, I got in the old days in England, you'd have the wrapped Dunlop 65s, and if I reached the end of the field in three shots, I would get a wrapped Dunlop 65, and next time, if I reached it in two, I'd get another one, and at the end, if I reached it in one, I got one. So I've got those in a drawer as well. So it's just something that I'm a working class lad, and to see what golf has given me, coming from England as a working class upbringing, to get to have experienced the greatest golf courses in the world and the PGA Tour and being around presidents and people of great power and influence, it's just you pinch yourself. You really do. I've stood on the first tees at these golf courses that I just think, what in the world am I doing here? And it just again, it's that reminder of the journey and the reminder of all that hard work and all the bad things that happened. It was all worth it in the long run.
How important do you think gratitude is just for the game and having the right mindset?
Oh, it's everything. It's you learn it a lot of the time too late. I play golf. I love playing golf still. I was fortunate. My career was taken by injury, not by bad form. And so I never lost the love of the game. But now I don't practice, and now I understand how hard the game is. And
Mm.
when I hit a great shot, instead of me thinking, well, I'm a pro, I'm supposed to do that. I think, geez, that was unbelievable to be able to control a 7 iron like that and hit my spot and see it play out in my mind beforehand and then make it happen in reality was amazing. And then the opposite, when you hit a bad shot, man, golf's a really hard game. And, I'm really grateful to be out here and I can't wait to hit the next shot and see if I can do better. So that attitude, I think, would have stood me in better stead had I had it when I was playing for a living.
Right. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you learned it, and hopefully we'll spread this message out for more people to try and do it. That's actually the first lesson of my first book, and people seem to really resonate with that. So I'm glad that you could have a pro perspective on that. So was that a goal of yours? When you were playing junior golf, where you're like, man, I'm always gonna make this my career. I want to be a pro, or did you just want to work in the industry? What was that process like in England to then coming over here?
Yeah, it was a really interesting mindset for me. So I had a highly unusual start to golf in that I had something that PGA Tour players don't have traditionally, which is a full-time job. So when I left high school at 18, I worked for 2 years in the pensions industry in England, which is a very mind-numbingly boring job. And it was hard because I was trying to play golf 2 times a week at the weekends, playing against everyone else playing 7 days a week. And so the reason I made the move to America was I just wanted to play 7 days a week, and that gave me the opportunity to try and earn a scholarship. But I never had that. Yeah, it's funny. I've got an audio tape of me when I was 6 years old asking what I wanted to do when I was growing up, and I said I want to be a pro golfer, but it was nothing really that I ever thought about as obsessively. However, my thoughts were I just wanted to see how good I could get. I just wanted
Mm,
to push myself and just see where that took me, whether that was college golf would be the limit, then that was what it was going to be. But as you kept progressing, you could see, okay, I'm not very far away from that next level. And I never sort of, certainly my career more than anyone's, I never skipped a level. So it was college, and then it wasn't able to turn pro for 3 years because I wasn't good enough. And then it was mini tours, and then it was Corn Ferry Tour, then it was PGA Tour. And so it was that continual progression, that continual inquisitiveness, and that belief that and understanding of realism, and understanding of what the how good the best players in the world are, and how small that difference is from me when I was playing on the mini tours. I remember playing with Steve Lowry, who obviously had won a number of times on tour at his home course in Birmingham in Alabama. And yeah, obviously he wasn't grinding, he wasn't going through the motions like he would on the tour, but I beat him quite comfortably. And I was just playing on the mini tours at the time. I thought, God, this guy's just won on tour recently, and I beat him. I beat him easily. And so again, that was that lovely just validation of you're a really good player. And now it's just a matter of, okay, what can you do now to separate yourself from the other, 1,000 or so mini tour golfers?
mhm.
And so that's where you were kind of, there's a little bit of trial and error. And then I really hit hard into the mental approach, and the emotional toughness, the emotional stability, and trying to go that route, because I tried the physical route, and I wasn't physically very gifted, and I wasn't
Mhm.
physically very imposing. And so again, through realism, I think I understood, okay, where am I going to get my bang for the buck? Where am I going to get my competitive advantage against these players who I'm trying to beat?
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So, because you got a great attitude, and I know you turned, or you were the oldest professional on the PGA Tour at 40. So we got to get this chunk before we got on the PGA Tour, because I think there's a lot of lessons that a lot of players can get. Because, like you said, it physically you weren't, so like Rory out there, some specimen that just has the perfect swing, can hit it 300 yards on autopilot. So let's go back a little bit to turning pro and what that was like. What was the landscape? What year was this? Just to kind of show the evolution, because I think it's really going to inspire a lot of people.
Yeah, so I had 3 really good years at college. An All-American year at junior college got me a scholarship to Auburn. I was all SEC my first year at Auburn, or my junior year in total. And then senior year, I was useless. I went from number 1 to number 5 on the team. And as I said, realism kicked in. I said, well, that's it. That's the end of the
Mm,
dream, because no one's going to sponsor me. I didn't have money to play, and I wasn't going to shoot 73 in a tournament and lose all the money. So
mhm.
I was very close to going home, and maybe
So what happened in that junior to senior year?
I switched equipment.
Interesting.
I turned up in America with a persimmon driver, a persimmon 3 wood with a band-aid around the whipping to keep it in one piece. Mizunos that were probably 10, 12 years old, with massive rust spots, and no silvery stuff on there on the front. Um, but that they were the clubs that I was comfortable with, and I
Hmm.
upgraded to metal woods immediately when I got there. But I I went from blades to DCIs in my
Mm,
year, and it was no research on my part. It was, I've made enough dumb decisions in my years, but my best friend Ian Steele, who came over to America with me, we were at Auburn, we were at junior college together, then at Auburn together. He switched to DCIs and started beating me every week. So, it couldn't be him; it had to be the equipment. So that was the logic involved, and that was a very, very bad decision. So I was always a shaper of the ball. I
uh-huh.
liked the ability to vary flights and trajectories and shapes, and I couldn't do that with cast clubs. And my
Mm,
fade became a block, and my block became a push block, and that was not a very successful formula. So I I almost went home someone was very nice in that they believed in what I was doing. The general manager at Inverness Country Club in Birmingham was a former rabbit on the PGA Tour, would chase the Monday qualifiers, and he had me just coming out and playing with the members all the time, and the members
Uh-huh.
loved me, and I was starting to play better. But he saw my work ethic, he saw how I treated people, he saw that he would kind of go out of his way a little bit for me, and he helped go through immigration to get me a membership director job at the golf club. No one else wanted to
Oh.
do it. They couldn't fill it. And so I was able to apply for that, and I got a work visa, which gave me 5 more years because my existing visa was just about to run out, which would have meant I would have gone home because I had no
Mm.
prospect in pro. So in that 5 years, well, actually in the 3 years, the first 3 years of it, I developed my game. My game came back, and
Hmm.
I talk to kids that they say they want to turn pro. And I said, look, you've got to be realistic how good you've got to be. So my first year there, I started shooting par or better every round. And when I went elsewhere, I would shoot around par. That's not good enough to turn pro. The next year, I shot in the 60s every time I played the home course. When I went to another course, I shot par or better. That's not good enough to turn pro. Finally, that next year, I shot in the mid 60s basically every time I played the home course, and in the 60s every time I left. Now that gives you justifiable cause to turn
Hmm.
pro. And so that that was sort of the pivotal point. In between, I'd saved up some money. I'd play the odd mini tour event down on the Gulf Coast, and I actually won a couple of them. I was sleeping in an Auburn van at the time. I couldn't afford hotels. I couldn't afford nice food, so you would take a gallon jug to take care of your ablutions, and lay in the back of an Auburn van with a CB radio and no air conditioning, no fan. If it was hot outside, it was hot inside. If it was cold outside, it was cold inside. And again, that helps you with mental toughness. I mean, I found a way to be able to be moderately successful doing that, but I was only playing 6 or 7 events a year when I saved up the
Hmm.
money. And then finally, when I was shooting in the mid 60s, a group in Birmingham got together and sponsored me. And I went out that next year, won 4 times on the Teardrop Tour, which was a pretty competitive tour in North and South Carolina back in the day. And actually got straight through the final stage of qualifying for my first go. Uh,
Wow.
so I got to the Nike Tour, found out very quickly I wasn't good enough for the Nike Tour, and then came back 6 years on the mini tours of every year I made money, which is quite an achievement. I'd always win. So I always had that ability to handle pressure. I always had
Hmm.
the ability to win tournaments, make money. But when it came to second stage of qualifying, so I always got through first stage. At second stage, it was kind of a blocking point in that I knew that I was 4 rounds away from fundamentally transforming where I was the next year.
Hmm.
But with that comes one bad 9 holes or one bad hole, and you're right back to square one again. And for 4 years in a row, it was futility. It was be inside the number after 3 rounds and find a way to shoot 74 or 5 in the last round and miss by one or two. And
Hmm.
so that was the frustration of not being able to play well under the utmost pressure, but the understanding that I played really well under pressure for the rest of the year. So I
Hmm.
knew I was very, very close. And so what I was doing was everything I was doing was basically everything I needed to do to get to that next level. But there was one thing missing, and that one thing was just dedicating myself to the mental side of the game. And
Hmm.
I made a conscious decision after finishing again one shot out of getting through second stage on the 5 hour journey home from that golf course to kind of rethink things. And when I got home, I was in my office and I stumbled on some papers that someone had given me many years ago, and some literature that would help, some audio cassettes that would help, and I started listening to them and I started reading the papers, and I thought, this is amazing. This has been sitting there waiting for me to read it for the last 10 years, and I haven't read it. And
Hmm.
it's just that, there's a spiritual element to it as well. It was meant to be that I went into that closet and I went and looked where I looked because I was cleaning my room up. It was messy, and like all good people who clean their rooms, they open a door and they chuck stuff behind it and shut the door and forget about it. And when I did that, I saw this stuff. And I thought, that's interesting. Let me have a little look at that. And it was just like, the scales fell from my eyes, and I knew that was it. That was the way forwards. And
Hmm.
then on in, I practiced less physically, practiced more mentally, took the time that I saved from not practicing and used that same amount of time in my office or in my room at home to just throw myself 100% into that part of the game.
Wow. Yeah, I'm really excited to learn more about this mental approach that changed everything for you. I had to rewind a little bit just because I wanted to know what you were doing practice wise to go from shooting around par to shooting breaking par to shooting mid 60s in a few years. This is, pre TrackMan days and all the apps and everything we have now. What were you doing at that time? Because you said the mental side wasn't a big part of it yet. So what was the practice looking like? Were you just playing a lot? Just to maybe kind of, I know a lot of guys are always trying to get through that next level, especially breaking par. That's a big one. But what did you feel like was kind of the driving factor there?
Well, it was, it's like all players, trying to get better. A lot of it was just sheer volume.
Hmm.
Whether it was very efficient, I don't know, but the results came, and
Yeah.
I practiced hard. I worked really hard on putting. I worked really hard on chipping. I always drove the ball straight. I always hit the irons good, and I just
Hmm.
knew that, the chipping and putting was the thing that was the low hanging fruit in effect. That
Hmm.
I needed to find a way to, instead of making 4 or 5 bogeys around, I needed to make 2 bogeys around, or 3 bogeys around, and give myself a chance to shoot under par every single time. Most of the time around my home course, I wouldn't make any bogeys and make a
Mm.
lot of birdies. But I was always smart. I always played, in effect, wicked smart golf. I knew what my tendencies were. I knew what my limitations were, and so I didn't try and do anything more than I was capable of. And then when you throw that together with a better short game, and you throw that together with better putting, and you throw that together with a slightly more efficient swing, then all of a sudden, without really changing a whole lot, you just practice a little bit smarter. You
Hmm.
practice a little bit more efficiently. You practice your weaknesses, which I think is incredibly important. You're only as strong as the weakest chain link in the chain. And then everything just came together where you would stand on that first tee, and without conscious expectations, you knew you were going to be a couple under par after 3 or 4 holes. And then you knew you were going to have the confidence to keep making birdies. I was never really one, even before I really got hard into the mental side of the game, I wasn't one who was overly scared of going low. I think because I always knew I was going to keep it in play, and I was going to give myself birdie chances. I didn't really have that double bogey swing in my game where at any time a disastrous, destructive shot could come in there. So
Right.
worst, I was going to make bogey, but most of the time, even with a poor shot, I was going to make a par. So that was comforting. But it was just months and months and months of work. I was
Hmm.
self-taught when I was 26. I started working with a coach. Again, just to get that little bit of understanding of, the tendencies in my swing, the problems in my swing that would create a problem potentially under pressure. And we kind of just worked on that, on
Hmm.
understanding, my tendency was just, I was a fader of the ball. I'd kind of hang back a little bit and just hold on and just block it a little bit. And when you get under pressure and you get a little bit tense, you tend to block it a little bit more. And then you overcome it and hit a big low pull. And so we just worked on a few things like that, a few reminders more than anything. And,
Hmm.
that's the great thing that I am really excited and happy and free in that I was never over encumbered by mechanical thought. I just had my DNA that my dad had given me when I was 4 or 5 years old. And that all came from him putting a stick across from the ball and saying, make the divot past the stick. That was all he told me to do. He never told me how to do it, which I think is crucial. I just, as a kid, just athletically figured out how to make the club hit the ground past the ball. And as a result, I never thought about how to hit a ball. It just happened. And so in that simple thing that my dad taught me, there was 100 golf lessons. There was a steady head, there was a pivot, there was weight transference, there was a flat left wrist at impact. And it's funny, we found some old cine film of me, and the swing doesn't look that much different to what it does now. So the DNA was there,
Hmm.
but without knowing really, what that DNA was and how I got it, I just had it. So I find teaching, I enjoy teaching, but I enjoy teaching a little bit more by feel and a little less by numbers
Hmm.
and mechanics, more than anything because I'll be honest, I'm not 100% confident that I can explain the mechanics like someone who's studied the golf swing that is nowhere near as good of a golfer as me, but has studied the swing and the mechanics and what X leads to Y, and if you do A, this happens and B happens, and
Hmm.
everything goes from there. So it's fascinating when you get into coaching, and I think the wisdom part of things has been lost over the years, because in many respects that's how golf teaching and coaching was in the past. It was
Hmm.
wisdom handed down from a wizened old Scotsman to another wizened old Scotsman who gave it to a pro that came across the Atlantic, who then used those lessons he learned to teach his assistant pros, and so the pattern continues. But I have a sense through social media, through people like yourself, that wisdom and common sense is starting to make a little bit of a comeback, because I think people have had enough of paying, $100 plus for a lesson, and at the end of it, they sure look like they may swing the club better, but their scores don't reflect it for the majority of people. And so there's having to blend the two. You obviously have to have fundamental understanding of the golf swing and understand what it is you're trying to do, but you've also got to take it to the golf course, and that's where I think we're starting to see it that be a little bit more important. The PGA of America is starting to push that more, which I
Hmm.
think is only good for golf.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. I think that a lot of players can benefit from that feel approach versus just like looking at the iPad and all the numbers that they don't understand spin rates and spin axis and all this other jargon that can get really confusing sometimes. So I think that instructors like yourself are probably going to be a lot more helpful for a lot of everyday golfers that just want a simple fix and they don't need to go down that rabbit hole of YouTube University or anything else that can overwhelm.
But if
When
you don't know where the club face, if you don't know where the club's coming from, and you don't know where the club face is, those numbers don't mean anything because you
Right.
can't replicate them from swing to swing. So it is fascinating to me, and I work a lot on club face control. Of
Hmm.
just That's how I learn the game, to control the club face. Learn how to hit it low, learn how to hit it high, learn how to curve it, learn how to hit the outside of the ball, the inside of the ball, whatever it is you can do. I think that's how you learn where the face is at impact.
Hmm. I'm excited to learn now about the mental stuff because, like you said, you were right there. It sounds like you were close with Q School. And was this the process where it was just you were going straight to the PGA Tour, right? Or was Corn Ferry around yet? Or because I know they had a pretty rigorous, it wasn't like a 6 day qualifying at one point to get to the PGA Tour.
Yeah, so it was first stage was 4 rounds, second stage was 4 rounds. I would always fail, apart from the very first time I did qualify in school, fail at second stage, and then final round was 6 rounds at the time, and I
Man.
believe it was cut as well. I can't even remember.
Okay.
But yeah, so after I failed in 2004, it sounds terrible to fail when you played basically 63 holes really well. And I ran into this literature and these audio cassettes. It was from two people. Dave Reagan was a lovely old pro who mentored me. When I first moved to Birmingham, I just ran into him one day and he just got talking to me. Just a really friendly old guy. Played on the Ryder Cup, finished runner up to Jack Nicklaus in a PGA Championship. I think he won on tour. But was so generous with his time. And that, when I do public speaking, I talk about the power of mentorship. And
Hmm.
sometimes you don't realize they're mentors. You don't realize how important they are to you. And you may not listen to everything they're telling you. And so I would sit and just talk to him and ask him questions. And he would give me some advice, and he would give me a few tips on chipping and putting. And then he said one day, "Hey, you read this stuff. This will be really good for you." And I was young. I was, I guess, 26, something like that. And I just didn't understand the validity of it.
Hmm.
Again, when you go back to mentors, when a mentor tells you something to do something, man, do it. You listen to what they're telling you, because this guy has achieved more than you'll ever probably likely to achieve in your life. But that's what you're trying to attain. That's
Hmm.
the level you're trying to get to. And so you got to listen to him. And I read it, and I kind of see what they're talking about, but I put it away. And then I think about 4 or 5 years later, I moved to Dallas for just a little bit when I met my wife. Um, and I hooked up with an English fella, David Clay, who was a really good teacher. Was kind of one of Arnold Palmer's guys in his Arnold Palmer schools and golf club setups. And he really helped me with my golf swing, just evolve it just a little bit more. But his best friend was a chap called Art Pfeiffer, who was a clinical psychologist, like a
Mm.
genius. And he was, I believe, the first American to present in front of the Russian Institute of Science or Moscow Institute of Science in communist times. So he was that world famous or that highly acclaimed. And he gave me a bunch of audio cassettes and just said this would really help you with relaxation and visualization and again it was
So
just
these
so
weren't specific to golf. These were just more broad sports psychology or
there,
psychology.
there was broadly just psychology, but then there were some golf specific things as well.
Okay.
But it was fascinating stuff.
Hmm.
And when I got back into it in 2001, when I threw myself into it, I got this stuff out. And so the audio cassettes, there was 8 of them that were subliminal. So, hopefully I'm glad I didn't become a serial killer or anything like that. But it was, it was waves and seagulls, but underlaid underneath that you couldn't hear, but your subconscious could hear was one tape was on positive thinking, one was on self-confidence, self-image, optimism, enthusiasm, relaxation. It was just these incredible traits that you need
Hmm.
to be a great golfer. And so,
So before any of this, did you have any idea about the subconscious, the conscious, like the mental game was still probably not the most talked about thing in golf? Was this all kind of new and you were just like, man, I know I'm close, so I'm just going to be open to new ideas?
yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, obviously Bob Rotella was the
Hmm.
flavor of the day, and people would start talking about I'm seeing Bob Rotella,
Hmm.
and Bob would be on the Golf Channel, and so we at least had an awareness of it. My dad actually had the book, um, oh, the Timothy Galway book, the tennis book.
Oh, yeah, the inner game of tennis.
In a game of tennis, and he had that back in the 70s or 80s, and
Oh,
so
wow. Okay.
I'd looked at it and kind of was aware of it. He'd read it. He thought it was
Hmm.
great. And so there was an awareness, but still at that stage, like the golf psychology was the last resort. It was you try to perfect the swing.
Yep.
As a young player, everyone's thoughts is the same. Okay, if I perfect my swing well enough, I'll shoot 68 or better every single time I play because my swing's
Hmm.
so good. And 99.9% of players figure out pretty quickly, or most of them figure it out too late, that that doesn't work. And so I knew that this was that thing that not many other people were going to do, certainly not to the extent that I was doing. And so I knew that, okay, I'm limited physically, I'm limited potentially in talent, but I can get a competitive advantage here, and not just a small one. I can get a massive competitive
Hmm.
advantage where I could get um, as mentally tough as some of the very best players in the world if I can just commit to this process. And I started to see the benefits pretty quickly as well. That was the great news, where it's not like you had to work on it for 3 or 4 years. Immediately I started to feel different on the golf course. Immediately I started to be more relaxed under stressful times.
Hmm.
I felt more my self-image and self-confidence was way higher than it was before. I'm English, we're self-deprecating. We don't tend to toot our own horn, shall we say. And so, I would kind of slink in the background. These big stud, 6'2" specimens with incredible golf swings, and there's me, 5'8", 160 pounds, wringing wet with a good repeatable golf swing, but no one was going to come and watch me on the range. And so, there was that feeling of being, a little bit less
Mm.
impressive than everyone else. So you had to build that self-confidence and that self-image. And so I worked really hard on those. I kind of looked at those tapes and started to see, okay, which of those ones do I feel the weakest at? And they were the ones that I really kind of hit upon. I've always been enthusiastic and optimistic, so I knew I
Hmm.
didn't do too much with that. I've always been a positive thinker, so I really didn't need to do too much with that. Um, but that part of my character of self-image and self-confidence, I just listened to that obsessively. And I could be in the garden, but just have at that time the Walkman on and just listen to it. And you just trust that all those incredible messages were going in there.
Hmm.
And it was going to become a lot more permanent. And as I said, I would feel like I walked taller. wanted to interject myself into conversations after I'd done that around those same people that maybe I would keep back from a little bit in the past.
Fascinating. This is so cool. So was it journaling at all? Was it just listening to these tracks? Was it did you ever speak with anyone like one on one, or was it just mainly the tracks, or did you do any like visualization or guided visualization? Like was this considered, I guess, hypnotherapy, or what do you think?
Yeah, no, I was basically left to my own devices. Unfortunately, Dr. Pfeiffer passed away, but
Mm,
I had the legacy of all his stuff.
yeah.
And so something I was really into was autogenics. You would get an incredibly relaxed state at home, and
Okay.
then you would say like a phrase. I
Yeah.
would say calm and serene. Um, and when you'd say that phrase in an incredibly relaxed state, that was again in the subconscious. So when
Mm,
you said that on the golf course in a stressful situation, immediately the subconscious kind of said, "Oh, everything's going to be okay. Everything's fine. We're calm and serene." And it just allowed me to just calm down, relax, be able to play the
mm,
game I was capable of instead of letting the situation get the better of me or a position or a score or whatever else it was. But there was a lot of deep muscle relaxation. There was a lot of visualization of a round of golf. And what I would do, I'd visualize playing well and I'd visualize playing poorly and finding a way to make par or finding a way to scrape around together. Now, visualizing 18 holes is not easy. It takes a lot of effort. And I could maybe do six at a time.
mm.
Uh, I think Jack Nicklaus talked about he would do, something similar, do more holes, but he would play his round in his mind the night before he played a tournament. And in the end, I would start to maybe go to crucial holes and visualize myself playing those holes. If I'm a fader of the ball, if there was an awkward tee shot, I would replay that shot over and over again in my mind, hitting the shot I wanted to hit that next day. And then it just that translated to the golf course, and it was amazing that next year. Again, I won like I always did on the mini tours, but that year, I never finished outside the top six in any tournament, including
Wow.
first and second stage of qualifying school. I wasn't a better golfer. I was
Hmm.
just mentally much tougher, emotionally more stable, and had that ability to turn what was last year 73s into 71s and 71s into 68s and 68s into 65s. And so it just I always gave myself a chance. I always stayed in a round where I talk about it in the book I've just written. You're always 45 minutes away from transforming around, but you've got to stay in the round to that point to allow that 45 minutes to have any benefit. If you let the round get away from you by getting frustrated or not making good decisions or pushing things more than you should do, and you're six over par after seven, it doesn't matter if you play three holes in two under par, you're still four over par or whatever. But if you found a way to turn that six over par into three over par or two over par, you make a couple of birdies in that 45-minute stretch. Now all of a sudden you're back to even. The momentum's with you. You have a good finish. All of a sudden you turn what could have been a disaster into an under par round, and that's what I did a number of times. So it was fascinating to see how many times I could play well. I may have played 20, 25 events that year. I was probably only playing well half of the time. I was
Mm.
playing decently a quarter of the time, and I was playing poorly a quarter of the time. But those poor weeks, because of the mental outlook and my dedication to that, they became good weeks.
So just so everyone can hear that again, you were practicing physically less, practicing more on the mental side, and turning typically rounds that maybe would get away from you into ones that were very scoreable and manageable, and you didn't finish outside the top six.
That's correct. Yeah. So
Wow.
that I was so proud of that, just that consistent
Because that's
performance.
the thing. I mean, number one reason people reach out to me, I want to play more consistent.
Yeah.
That's like you understand, right? So the fact you were able to do that, that is the definition of consistency. Did it feel more effortless, or did it feel like you were just kind of playing within yourself?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was so much more effortless because at the end of a round, man, I was ready to go do stuff
Mm.
after
You
in the
weren't like
previous
drained
years.
then.
I was so exhausted and I battled so hard and I'd worked so hard against myself, beating myself up mentally, beating myself up emotionally. You would just finish and go sit in your horrible hotel and just sit on your horrible bed and just collapse. And it took so much out of me. And I just enjoyed that year so much. I love my time I really enjoyed my time on the mini tours. I played a
Mm.
lot on the Dakota's tour. And to me, that was just, it was like summer camp. I would disappear up there in, I think it was June, July, and then come back in September and just do the loop from Spencer, Iowa, all the way across the South Dakota, all the way across North Dakota and come home. And what I liked is it reminded me a little bit of English amateur golf, where
Mm,
it was everyone was super serious on the golf course, but after the round, man, people would go and sit and have a beer, and the best player in the field and the worst player in the field would be at the same restaurant. Members of the golf clubs would take you out to dinner. You would go around to people's houses, have barbecues. And it was just like I remembered amateur golf. It's like the European tour was,
hmm
20, 30 years ago. And I'm so glad I got to experience that type of golf. And I think a lot of kids miss out on that now because it's
hmm
so super serious from age AGA upwards.
Yeah.
Effectively, if you're a good junior from the age of 15, you don't really, I don't think, get to enjoy the game of golf. It's
hmm
just so competitive and it's a job. And, I was so glad I got to be a kid as a junior. I got to be a young adult and enjoy life and enjoy finding out about myself and enjoy finding out about the world and other people, playing a load of golf, being successful, not being successful, coming to another country, and never losing that appreciation of how lucky I was, but how fortunate I am to play golf at college and for a living.
Yeah, that's the perspective you have to have. I mean, everybody I've had on here that's been on mini tours and tried to go from college to the pro life, it just seems like it can get the best of you. So it sounds like you have to have the right attitude just to survive even off the course. Like you said, you're kind of alone sometimes. You're staying in hotel rooms. You don't have family with you a lot. So it sounds like having the right attitude and the right mental game, obviously helped your physical skills and your scores. And then what was it like then when you did make it through and you were able to get to that next level?
Well, to get on the Corn Ferry Tour was huge, and I go back to that second stage of that year where I got to final stage, which got me to the Corn Ferry Tour. I did what I always do. I got off to a good start, shot 67. I think the second round I shot 74, and with the new mental makeup, here's what I
Mm,
did. I put the clubs in the car. The previous year, I would have then hit balls until dark, hit balls, chipped, putted, obsessed about it, worried about it, wouldn't have slept, woke up the next day and, just felt awful and tried to get it around. I put the clubs in the car. I went to the hotel, went to the beach, and I walked up the beach and I visualized the best shot I hit all year with each club, from the lob wedge all the way to the putter. And so I had 2 hours and I visualized it so clearly. It was so vivid. So I had 2 hours of the most positive thinking you've ever come across. And so for 2 hours, I just seen perfect golf shots. And I slept like a baby that night and went out the next day, played great in the final round and got to the Corn Ferry, got to the final stage, which got me to the Corn Ferry Tour. But that was the power of changing my outlook on how I went about things. And I go back to that decision to do that was
hmm
probably what got me to qualify in school, which got me to the Corn Ferry Tour, which eventually got me to the PGA Tour. If I hadn't have learned that lesson, maybe I would still have been playing mini tours at 40 instead of playing on the PGA Tour. So my
Wow.
rookie year as a Corn Ferry Tour player, I finished runner up early on 3 or 4 months into the year, and I actually had a great. I actually had an amazing experience. I missed the cut the previous week. I was on the putting green and I met a friend of mine who lived there. And I said, "Hey, I'm looking for a caddy. I'd always get local caddies." And he said, "Yeah, he'll caddy for you." He said he's keen to do it. And it was this athletic guy was on the putting green, just sort of standing there. And so he introduced himself to me. And it turns out he was a golf psychologist. And so his name was Rob Bell, who's worked with some really good players over the years and on the tour, on the Corn Ferry Tour. And we just hit it off. And so it was great to have someone who would be so useful for me because I
Yeah.
appreciate what he did. And he was so happy to have someone who appreciated what he did. And I think he tested me in one of those rounds. I played great in the first round. I think the second round, I played great in the front nine. I'm right there on the first page of the leaderboard. I birdied the 18th, which was my ninth hole of the day, and I gave him a little fist bump, and he starts laughing. And I said, "What are you laughing at?" He said, "Oh man, it was the funniest thing. I was cleaning your ball and I dropped it down the bag, and I didn't want to turn the bag upside down, so I just gave you a new ball and you made birdie with that. I said, "Oh, Rob, we can't do that. That's a penalty." And so I said, "Is that one of your psychological tests for me?" And he went ashen gray, his face. And so I think I got a two-shot penalty for it. But I turned around and used the mental training, the mental toughness to turn it around, play great that next nine, and finished runner-up in the tournament. So it was good validation of the exercises and the training I'd done to be able to handle that. Yeah, I played well that year and kept my card. The next year and the year after that, played okay, was either keeping my card or just missed it where I play at the start of the next year. And
Hmm.
then in 2009, I won my first event on the Corn Ferry Tour, and it turned out it was the longest sudden death playoff in the history. Nine
Wow.
holes. It's Matthias Gronberg, who was a seasoned veteran from the DP World Tour, won several times there. And again, the mental side of things was the power of visualization was incredible because I visualized the night before. I was in the second to last group, I think, and I visualized having a 4-foot putt to win the tournament. And I kind of understood kind of where the flag would be, and
Hmm.
and I visualized, handling the pressure, relaxing on the side of the green, going through my routine. Routine was so important to me to kind of keep me focused. I could feel the practice swing. I could kind of hear the buzz around me, and I rolled the putt in my imagination. Well, it amazingly enough, I had basically the same putt to get into a playoff, to hopefully win my first event. And I was actually on the side of the green, kind of doing my relaxation techniques, and I just started laughing because I said to myself, "No, I made this about 12 hours ago." So I rolled it in the middle, and then I prevailed finally on that ninth hole. So it was a very cool experience again to see it in practice. But I went to qualifying school that year because I just missed out my PGA Tour card through Corn Ferry. I got the final
Mm.
stage, and as my story often went, 25 cards are on offer, and I finished 26. So I missed out by one person. I remember Andrew McClarty was on the last hole. All he needed to do was double bogey the hole. When he would have got his card, I would have got my card. He missed the green left in two. So I said, four shots. Could he possibly chunk this and then hit a bad chip or putt and then two putt from there and give me a chance? And he didn't, unfortunately. He made the most solid bogey of his life, and I missed out by one. So that next year, it kind of took the stuffing out of me a little bit, and I really didn't get off to a very good start, and I was a little frustrated. But at the end of that year, I rededicated myself to the mental side. It was just almost like a refresher course,
Hmm.
and got off to a decent start in 2011, and then kind of really started to play well. I went home to England, spent a week at home with my friends and my family, and they just saw me in action and they said, "You're ready. You're ready to
Mm.
play on the PGA Tour." Every time I played, I shot in the mid 60s with them. Um, they just said, "You carry yourself like a PGA Tour player, even though you don't have that card yet."
Mm.
And I went
Kind of
back.
like act as if.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I went back 2 weeks later and won, I think. Yeah, won in Pennsylvania. And that was it. And wrapped up my tour card. And it was special because Arnold Palmer was the honorary tournament chairman of that tournament. And there's a picture of me making my 3-inch putt to get my tour card, and he signed the photo. So I mean, just another one of those
Yeah.
just pure bump moments of having Mr. Palmer be a part of your journey and your graduation to the tour.
Man, that is like a Cinderella story. So I can't wait to go into the PGA Tour chapter, but I just had to ask a couple questions on what you said you were doing because it sounds like visualization was a big part of it. Routines were a big part of it. That putt you said you had on 18 to get into the playoff, and then you got nine more. So 81 holes to win. That's amazing. But what were some things you were doing on the course to stay calm and collected? Because I mean, I imagine your mind wants to race into if I win this, then I make the PGA Tour. I mean, we love to time travel out there. So, was there anything that you learned from all those tracks and literature about staying present, or did you have any breathing hacks, or what are some other things that you might have done that others could use in their own journey?
Well, all of the above, and I write this in the story in my
Mm.
book, "The Course Not Yourself." In the I found a really good system of hit the shot, react to the shot, objectively ask yourself a few questions, what you could have done better, and then spend that next 5 minutes relaxing.
Mm,
I think the word awareness is that word that in my book is talked about a lot, and I think unfortunately most golfers are blissfully unaware of number one how they feel, number two how they're talking to themselves,
mm,
and number three what they're putting their attention to. And so once through training, I was aware of tightness in my body. I had deep muscle relaxation techniques. I would grab a club as tight as I could possibly grab it. If I didn't have a club, I would just tense every muscle in my body as tight as it possibly could go, and then just hold it for 30 seconds and then just release it. And all
mm,
the time, the tension went out of my
yeah.
body. I would store tension in my jaw, in my neck, and I would, tense that as much as I could, probably more often than the rest of the body. Um,
Hmm.
and that would help as well. When you're nervous, when you're tight, your tightness goes up your hands into your forearms, through your shoulders into your back muscles. And so it's very hard to release the club consistently. So I had to constantly work on that, of just making sure I was nice and relaxed. I was aware of what I was saying to myself, but I would try and distract myself from the round of golf, and
Mm,
I would look at Deborah Graham in her book, The Eight Traits of Champion Golfers, that was kind of my Bible when I was playing
hmm.
professional golf. Would talk about the techniques that other players would use, and I loved outlining trees. Just the silhouettes of the trees, just to kind of engage my brain on something completely away from golf. Pay attention to the nice houses, or look at wildlife. Dave Stockton was a hunter and would love trying to find animals and birds and everything. And I just found myself all of a sudden, staring in the sky, and there's
Hmm.
a hawk, and just watch it, follow its flight. But it would distract me so much. And then 20, 30 yards away from the ball, then I knew it was time to re-tighten my focus, start the process of the routine, and then perform the shot and go through that same process to the next shot. And it doesn't guarantee success, but it gives you a much better chance to have your body and your mind in simpatico, working together, to give yourself the best opportunities to play a difficult sport less poorly and more well.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I'm so glad you brought up some of those things. I've actually learned a few of those from the book Jira Golf. I don't know if you've had a chance to check that one out, by Dr. Izzy Justice, and he talks about using your five senses a lot. He calls them the five doors to the brain, and how you can just use those when you're need to get present and you're starting to worry or panic, and just how many colors can you find, what smells do you smell, what sounds do you hear if you close your eyes, and just trying to get your mind in the present moment. So I'm really glad you brought that up. I think that's really cool, and I imagine that all felt like you kind of could use all that right when you got on the PGA Tour. So you make the 3-inch putt, you got Arnold Palmer there. Then what? I mean, this is like a childhood, lifelong dream like accomplished. Is it exciting, or more like don't screw it up now?
It was thrilling. It was exhilarating to have met, and probably in many respects surpassed maybe what I had expected. But I had set my goals high when I got to the Corn Ferry Tour. I knew I belonged. I
Hmm.
knew I belonged on the PGA Tour. And so I actually had a vision board of, me with a PGA Tour trophy, or me with a PGA Tour card, or, an imaginary bank balance, or whatever, pictures of my
I
family.
love it. I want to already. You need to set up motivational seminars. I'm going, man. The vision boards.
Oh,
That's fantastic. That
yeah,
is so
exactly.
cool.
So just all of these things, prepared me for success.
Hmm.
And then when I got there, I mean, as I said, I'm a working class lad, and I played golf with Janet Gretzky in the BMW Pro-Am on the Corn Ferry Tour, and became friends with them. And on the way to Hawaii, I stayed with the Gretzkys for 2 days before I went to Hawaii.
Wow.
So, I've gone from playing on the mini tours or sleeping in an Auburn van to staying in the Gretzky's pool house on the way to my first PGA Tour event. And I always say to my Canadian friends that you would have probably given your right leg to do what I did. I sat on the couch next to Wayne watching a New York Rangers game, and it, just pinch me moments. But within that first few weeks, I stayed with Wayne Gretzky. I met Bill Clinton. I met all these celebrities at Pebble Beach. Met Nick Faldo, who I named my first son after. which they say don't meet your heroes, and that may have been relevant in that case. But
No, no,
yeah,
that's oh,
it
I
was
was
such a
really
shame.
hoping that was going to be a different story. Oh no.
It did not go well. It did not go well. But I had a cheeky English caddy, and he kind of saw everything unfolding. Yeah, but he was pleasant enough, but he didn't make an effort. And as he walked away and I walked away, he shouted at me, "I told you should have called him Sevy, Gary." And he had a little chuckle about that. And Faldo looked over and just glared at me. So there you go. I guess I won't be
Wow.
invited to the ranch anytime soon. Uh,
Oh man. So what was your first event then was in Hawaii? That was when you stayed with the
It was in
Gretzky's?
Hawaii. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So
So I had
was that the Sony Open then?
yeah. So I
Okay.
had I teed up in that first tee and it
And you're
was
40 years old, right? At this point,
yeah,
this is so
exactly. Yeah.
2012. Just make sure I got the timeline right because this is amazing. Like, I mean, you got guys that are what? I mean, you're I don't know the average age of the PGA Tour at that time, or really, I mean, it's got to be 30, maybe less
Yeah,
than
I think
that.
so. Yeah.
And so you're 40 years old. Do you feel like you're, obviously older than a lot of guys? Does that impact you at all? Or are you just like so excited? You're like, I did it. I don't care if I'm the oldest rookie on tour. Like this, I mean, that to me is amazing.
It was weird in that I think the build up was more exciting.
Hmm.
Uh,
Once you got out there, it's just a golf course, right? You've done
yeah,
this a million
exactly.
times.
Yeah. Yeah. I spoke to the breakfast meeting at the Aloha Club, I think it was, or something. And that was really exciting. They heard my story, and they had some pretty famous people before, and the head of it came up to me after and
Hmm.
said, "Hey, I'll be honest, we had no clue who you were, but we're sure glad that you spoke to us because to hear your story." Kind of brings an everyman feel to the PGA Tour. We put these athletes on such a
Hmm.
pedestal because they're so good and they're so impressive and they're so talented. It was kind of nice to see what we thought was an ordinary guy make the PGA Tour, and so that was that kind of that little pinch me moment of okay, I'm really one of the guys now. I'm really one
Hmm.
PGA Tour members. And but when I stood on the tee, as you said, it was just another golf tournament, and I was actually a little disappointed. I thought the situation would be so overwhelming
Hmm.
that it would be hard to take that club away. But I hit a nine down the fairway, hit a wedge to 10 feet, made birdie. So it was.
Ooh.
I thought, wow, this is an easy
Well,
game.
the mental training paid off, it sounds like. I mean,
Exactly, exactly. So it was. I missed the cut,
dang.
but I came back the next week and shot 64 in the last round at the Humana at the time, which is now the American Express, and finished top 15. So again, there was that validation. Okay, I belong
Top
here.
15 in your second PGA Tour
Yeah,
event.
yeah.
Wow. Then
So
that gives you some serious points, right?
exactly, yeah. So it was a really
And that was your
again,
biggest payday, I imagine, at the time too. So,
yeah, exactly, yeah. So it to get off to a good start early, helped with reshuffles so got me in events.
hmm.
And so, I chugged along, made some cuts, missed some cuts. And then, Florida's always a little tricky. I managed to get into Bay Hill, didn't make the cut. Yeah, just had a sticky time in the spring. And again, I just use that as a reminder just to repivot and refocus. You
Hmm.
could get a little bit taken by being on the PGA Tour and having a courtesy car and having all this incredible stuff given to you, these incredible meals, and you got to understand that you're here for a purpose, and that's to play golf to
Hmm.
your abilities. And perhaps I got a little distracted from that. But when I rededicated myself, I don't like the heat in the summer, but I've always played well in the heat, which is I don't understand it. But I finished in the top 25 weeks in a row and went from being comfortably outside the top 125 to making the FedEx Cup playoffs. And so to
Wow.
do that as a rookie, as a 40-year-old rookie, without playing every event you want to play, you don't realize what a big achievement that is. I didn't think he was that. I didn't think I played that well on the tour. But obviously, the results prove that I did. When I compared my year on the Corn Ferry Tour the previous year,
Hmm.
I would have graded that play as an A or an A minus. And if I'd have played like that on the tour, I would have finished in the top 50 or 60, I think. Uh,
Wow.
but I played what I would say is maybe a B minus
Well, your
on the
B minus made it into the playoffs. I think
B
most people
minus
would
made it
take
to the
that.
playoffs. Yeah, exactly. So it was it was again that pride to say. all of this hard work, all of this belief, all of this dream, all of this, taking a leap of faith to leave your home country to
Hmm.
chase a dream was all worth it because I've just proved myself against the best players in the world for a year. And now I get to tee it up at the Barclays. And after 2 rounds, I was inside the top 10 and got drawn to play with Tiger Woods on Saturday, I think third or fourth last group out on the golf course. So
Okay, we got to hear more about this because I got a chance to interview Billy Mayfair last year, the only player to beat Tiger in a playoff ever. So that was wild because he wasn't really Tiger yet. He was, I think second or third year on tour. The crazy dominance hadn't happened yet. So this is 2012. Where was it at? You said?
so this is Beth Page back. So biggest
Oh,
tournament
you
I
got to
played.
play Bethpage Black
Yeah,
with this guy. Oh, this is gonna
it's
be
amazing. Yeah.
so. This is a third round. What? So you figure out your tee time the night before, right? And then are you like, oh my god?
Well, it was actually quite funny because I don't look at leaderboards. I want to stay completely focused on each shot. I don't want to get distracted by anything.
Hmm.
So on the 36th hole of the the 36th hole, I had like a 10-foot putt for birdie. And I went through my routine. I'm just like Tiger behind your right ear. I was in that position right there, looking at the putt from behind the hole or from behind the ball. And as I get up, the leaderboard's right there, and Christian and Woods are right next to each other. Well, I found out quite quickly why I don't look at leaderboards because that 10 up was about the worst 10 foot I'd ever hit. I think it finished up a foot short and about a foot right. But I tapped it in, and then maybe an hour later, you get the text coming through saying you're drawn with Mr. Woods at 2 o'clock or whatever at Bethpage Black. So it was, I would say, it was certainly a sleepless night. I was, you know,
He
I'm a
played really good in 2012, wasn't it? That like one of his best years, or was that?
I don't think he had his
Oh, I was
great
thinking
year.
2009. He won a
Yeah,
bunch.
exactly.
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
the injuries and all the years.
yeah,
After 2000,
ex-
I feel like kind of get. So
yeah.
Bethpage Black though, that's like a really hard golf course. I mean, I
Big
I
boy
love
golf
watching
course.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a student of the game, a student of the legacy and the history of the game, and so to play with Tiger in the biggest tournament of my life on one of the sort of the iconic golf courses in America that everyone can literally play. It's not
And he
like
won the U.S. Open there. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. It was just that moment where just everything, all of those years driving a crappy car with oil leaks and no wondering if it's going to start or wondering if the oil is going to be out of the tank when you wake up the next morning. All of those days staying in hotels where, you were wondering if goodness knows what was going to happen outside that hotel that night. It was all worth it.
Mm.
To stand up there in the first tee playing head to head with arguably the best players who ever played the game, and not playing it in a pro-am, not playing it in a charity day, but playing it, you've earned the right to be teeing off with Tiger with a chance to win the biggest golf tournament you've ever played in. It was an overwhelming experience. Just it was 5,000 people around the tee, around down the fairway, around the green on every hole.
Hmm.
I'm used to 10 or 11 people watching me. So the shape of the hole gets a little easier. You fit it between the people, you should be in pretty good shape.
That's
So
fair.
yeah, so I really called hard on the mental side there because that was going to be the ultimate challenge. You
Hmm.
can prepare yourself for basically any other experience, but that experience you cannot prepare yourself. You don't have a library of experiences in your mind to be able to use that experience to deal with it. And so it actually started really well. I hit a great drive. We walked off the tee, and my caddy and I were walking down, and Tiger runs up behind us, and I say to him, "Holy heck, he's going to start talking to us. What's going on here?" And he runs down and he says, "Oh, Gary, what part of Australia are you from?" And so I gave him a perfect answer. I said, "Tiger, your people didn't do a very good job researching me last night, did they? I said, I'm from England." And he laughed, and that was it. We became really good friends for that round of golf. He was so welcoming, warm, fascinating to talk to.
Hmm.
But I got to experience what it's like to be Tiger Woods, and I wouldn't swap it for what I have, for the
Hmm.
anonymity that I have, for the several zeros less in my bank balance. What he goes through, or what he went through, and what he still goes through, I just don't know how you experience it. It's just, it's mind numbing. Just the people around him, the people wanting a piece of him, the nasty things people say to him from the spectator's perspective. And
Hmm.
it was such an experience that I'm so glad I got to experience it.
Yeah.
Uh, and I actually said that to him. I said, like Tiger, I mean, it's been an incredible day, but I tell you what, I wouldn't swap my life for yours or anything. And when someone looks at you
Hmm.
without saying yes or nodding, you could just tell he was looking at me and said, "Man, I wouldn't mind being that guy just for a day. Just be able
Wow.
to go to any restaurant and just sit there and just enjoy yourself and not have people wanting a piece of you." But
Hmm.
as I say, it was a fascinating experience for me, which it will live with me to this day. But unfortunately, I live so much in the present. I wish I could recall more of things. There's
Hmm.
certain things I remember vividly, and other things I haven't got a clue about.
What what was it sound? What did it sound like when he hit the ball? I feel like was it
Yeah.
just every shot pure? What did you shoot? What did he shoot? Did you have a few? Did you have some adrenaline? Like I'm sure you can remember some of that stuff.
Well, I couldn't feel my putter on the first hole. I mean, my adrenaline was so high, and I hit an awful putt and missed the short putt, and that did not set me off to a very good start. And I
Uh,
was very tight, very nervous for about 4 or 5 holes.
Pretty natural.
And then, then I really loosened. I actually played really well after that, but I just had one of those days where you were a foot away from being really, really good.
Mm,
And at the page, if you miss your spot by a foot,
yeah.
bad things happen.
Uh-huh.
He actually three putted 6 times that day, the most he'd ever three putted in a round
Are
of golf.
you kidding me?
Greens they were 14 and a half on the stimp meter, and then they dried out, and it was about a 15, 20 mile an hour wind. So
Oh,
they were
and every
basically,
green's elevated there. They got thick rough,
yeah,
so it's like just oof.
yeah.
That's a long day.
They were probably running the equivalent of about 16 or 17 on the stimp meter. And again, I had no library of experience
Yeah.
because I literally didn't know how hard to hit a 10-footer. So it was
Mm.
really, really that's what I wish I could have played a little bit better, just to enjoy a little
Mm.
bit. I was grinding so hard just to keep the train on the track. But it was he clipped me, but we didn't scare par. So it was.
Still a crazy story. I mean, not many people have that and would pay millions of dollars to have that experience. So I'm so glad you were able to do that. That's like again the Cinderella story from like you said, sleeping in the van to playing with Tiger Woods. Like, where's the documentary? Because I would watch this. And so, what are some other stories from the PGA Tour? What was it like even going from the Corn Ferry to the PGA? Was there any big changes other than the nice cars and the nice meals and stuff, or did the courses feel harder? Did you feel any more pressure, or were you just any other memories that you can share with us from that first year?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the courses are tougher. The penalty for mediocrity is
Hmm.
way higher. You could get away with it in the Corn Ferry Tour. Now, the Corn Ferry Tour courses have improved significantly over the years,
Right.
but still, there's a big enough difference where if you play mediocre on the corn free, you can still get in the 60s. If you
Hmm.
do that on the tour, it's very hard to break par. And so, unfortunately, my skill set lent itself pretty well to the tour. Hit it straight. Yeah, certainly wasn't long, but I was very good with long irons and hybrids. I was a good wedge player. I just wasn't a good enough putter for the length I hit it. I needed to be
Mm.
a 50 putter in the world, or sorry, on the tour to be, yeah, that would have comfortably got me in the top 75 from the way I struck the ball. Uh,
Mm.
I was just sort of hovering around that 100, and that's just not good enough when you average 280 or so. So, yeah, it was a shame and that's my biggest regret in my career, in that I never backed myself the way I should have done to maybe get a specialist putting coach to
Mm.
really become a great putter, and invested the money. And that's that one thing that stays with me, or I wish I'd have done a better job of. But the hardest thing for me was actually being proud of making a cut and making all this money for playing poorly. I had to get over that. To earn 15,000 on the Corn Ferry Tour, you had to play great.
Oh,
I just
gotcha.
made the cut and played poorly for the weekend. I made $15,000, and I would say to my wife, "I can't believe I just played crap and made 15,000." And that's not the attitude you need. You need to
Mm.
get in there and say, "This weekend, see if I can shoot 10 under par and go finish in the top 10." Yeah, there was a few times I was just happy to have made the cut. I wasn't
Hmm.
playing great, and I just couldn't quite put it together for the weekend, and just had a lot of those sort of 40th, 45th place finishes until I had that run of top 20s. And
Hmm.
the run of top 20s was just dumbing it down. It was just keeping it simple. And, I just, every shot I hit, as I took the club away, I said smooth. And as I came into impact, I said smooth. And it just sort of smoothed out my routine and my
Kind of like
tempo.
a 1-2 tempo, just smooth, smooth.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just started hitting it great and
Mm.
putting it well and chipping it well and just not making mistakes and there it was. But again, those top 20s, I only had one top 10 in there.
Hmm.
If I could have turned two or three of those top 20s in the top 10s, I would have made the second lot of playoffs and who knows what I could have done from there.
What do us casual viewers of the tour not realize what's going on behind the ropes? Anything that you're like, wow, I didn't expect this, or this is very different than what people see on TV?
I just think that the basically everyone on the PGA Tour are really good people.
Mm.
There's some different characters, but most of the time everyone is kind of they're singing from the same hymn sheet, should we say?
Hmm.
They're respectful. The people bend over backwards to make you feel welcome for in effect, their Super Bowl each year.
Yeah.
Um,
You're talking about
every
all the members that are working, the
all the members,
volunteers.
all the
Yeah.
volunteers, the people who run the tournaments, the charities involved. I
Hmm.
mean, this is they finish that week, and then the next week they get right back into getting ready for next year.
Hmm.
And to see what those people will do for you and what the doors that it opens for you, it really is it's eye opening. To be able to get tickets to sporting events and
Yeah.
seats at tables and not have to pay for meals. That's kind of nice as well. Going to some clubhouses, Memphis, you could go in the clubhouse and order anything you want, and they didn't charge you anything. Like it
Oof.
just blew my mind.
Big fan of food here, so I could do
Yeah,
some damage. I get it.
exactly. And it was just those little things
Hmm.
that just again to be treated the way you were treated, to be put on a pedestal, even though I didn't deserve to be on a pedestal. I'm just a regular guy.
Hmm.
But to just have that feeling of this person or these people think you're special, or you're elite, or you're accomplished at something, is just a wonderful reminder of how hard you've worked to get to that position. And conversely, when I would sit down and talk to them and have a beer with them and spend time with them, they couldn't believe that a PGA Tour player wanted to do that. So
Mm.
glad I never lost my humanity and who I
Yeah.
was, who I am as a normal guy. So I think I got to appreciate the tour maybe a lot more than a lot of other people who, if you think about it, are on a pedestal from the time they were 15 as juniors, and then
Yeah.
through the Corn Ferry straight away, and then straight on the tour, and they're multimillionaires on private jets. They don't have a sense of reality, and
Hmm.
they haven't had those experiences that I had. So I think I enjoyed it a lot more than they did. I got to play a really special practice round with Tom Watson at the Greenbrier. He was a hero of mine, obviously, five-time Open champion. I grew up watching him in my front room
Hmm.
and dreaming of having a chance to meet him one day. And played practice round. We had a great round. We had a little gambling game. He turned it on when he needed to. I turned it on at the end. We won a nice little wad of bills, and then we sat down afterwards. And he said, "Hey, you going to the pro-am dinner tonight?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. We're staying just down the road here with a family." And so we went there, and it was great to see that perspective like an old timer. And he was so upset that very few of the PGA Tour players came to that charity event,
Mm.
the pro-am dinner. It was actually just me and him. And he said, don't ever forget where you came from and what this event means to these people and what this event means to these charities and this community. And to hear it from a Hall of Famer who's achieved what he's achieved, I think was just that's the voice. They're the voices we need to just remind us of who we are, who we work for, and what our purpose is.
Mm. Yeah, never forget where you came from. I love that. And yeah, Tom's, oh man, love watching his game. Wanted him to win that last one whenever that
Oh,
was. So painful. He's such a great gamer. And at an older age still was crushing it too. So that's awesome to see. And so cool that that was a hero you did get to meet that it ended up well.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, I'm curious. I know we're running out of time here. Before getting into the book, I just had to ask one question. I already want to have you back for part two to help. I mean, your story is amazing. Now I want to get some more insights for how you can help us everyday golfers. But one question that I was just curious of when you're going to the PGA Tour, like you said, you got to go low. Do you set score goals? Do you set birdie goals? Do you just try and take it one shot at a time? Like, what was that attitude when you go out there? Hopefully you got 4 days, 72 holes, but how are you trying to like attack the golf course?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be strategic. Again, I play to my strengths.
Hmm.
I wasn't reckless. But there's the misnomer that you got to take it super deep. That's the
Hmm.
misnomer. You're playing with the best players in the world, so someone's going to go super deep. But you go out there and shoot 4 rounds of 68, you're going to finish in the top 10, almost every week you play. And how hard is it to shoot 68? Well, if you're one of the best players in the world, it's not that hard.
Hmm.
It's really hard to do 4 rounds in a row. Uh,
Right.
and so, that's where I would just, it's all cliches. You take one shot at a time. You do your best on every shot. You give yourself the best opportunity to put yourself in the right mindset to hit a great shot, and then you swing it, and whatever happens, happens. It's easier said than done, and certainly
Hmm.
when you're trying to make your living at it. But that's kind of the attitude I took. I never really had target scores in mind. But I just knew that, I had a game plan, but I had a plan B if things weren't going well. If you always had a score in your mind if you were near the cut, which
Hmm.
I was there way too often. So you kind of had an idea of what you needed to shoot. But I just had that ability to just dedicate myself to taking one shot at a time, have as intentional and as productive a routine as possible, and then let the chips fall as they may.
Hmm. Love it. You're a mental guru, and I want to know more about this book. I know you've teased it a little bit, so share a little bit more about the book and where people can follow this journey before getting into my last question.
Yeah, so it's called Beat the Course, Not Yourself. And I wrote it with Dr. Kurt Ickes, who wrote some baseball psychology books for teenage baseball players trying to, get better. And we designed this book for teenage competitive golfers. We got the foreword written by Nick Kleinert, head golf coach at Auburn University, National Coach of the Year, and from my alma mater and national
That's
champion.
fantastic.
Yeah, and Susie Whaley, former past president of the PGA of America. And what it does, it blends really nicely with the ADM model of PGA coaching of that sort of 15, 16-year-old age group to start getting into psychology.
Hmm.
And obviously Nick Kleinert to his forward basically backed up what the book talks about of what he looks for when he's recruiting. And so what we did, we wrote it in a story form to make it easy to read. So I love that book, 7 Days in Utopia, where there was a great story, but in that story were very, very actionable lessons that came out of
Hmm.
it. And at the end of each chapter, you knew what that chapter was talking about. Well, we did the same thing. We took a story of a 15-year-old kid that is desperately needs to earn a golf scholarship to go to college. He puts too much pressure on himself. He folds under pressure. He has that interminable car journey like all juniors do with their parents when he's played poorly. He reaches out to help for help, and a wizened old pro kind of takes him under his wing and helps him learn how to practice, teaches him a routine, teaches him how to handle himself between shots, expectations, emotional control, and just taking that from the practice range to the golf course and how he did it, and breathing and counting your steps and all of these things that we
Hmm.
talk about in golf psychology, but in the form of a story. So it is just an actionable plan that you have a game plan that you can read in a couple of hours, and at the end of it you will know what it is you need to do. And it turns out he plays great after he takes on board that advice and scores as low as he's ever scored in a tournament, and a college coach comes up to him and tells him how impressed he was with him, and he'll be keeping an eye on him. So it was designed as a kind of a niche book towards competitive teenagers, but it I've sold a ton of books to adults who understand the validity of any time you've got a pencil in your hands, whether it's a dogfight at the weekend at the local muni, or your club championship, or a
Hmm.
corporate day, whatever else it is. These techniques, this story will help you become a better player, because ultimately you've got to have a plan. You've got to have a business plan in effect on every shot.
Hmm.
And busy people, they don't have time to practice. They don't have time to hit 100 balls, let alone 1,000 balls a week to get any better. So if they can, before they swing that club, give themselves an opportunity to be as prepared as they possibly can be, that's going to, it's certainly not going to guarantee a good shot, but it's going to give them the best opportunity with no time for practice to hit a good shot or a playable shot.
Hmm.
And that's ultimately what we want. We want to have hit more good shots, hit less bad shots, score a little bit better. We're paying a lot of money and spending a lot of time to go out on a golf course. And if you're not doing it with any kind of planning or any kind of, you know, you're thinking behind what it is you're trying to do, you're going to get bad results every time. And all of a sudden that time and that money doesn't seem like quite as good of an investment. And we want it to be fun.
Yeah, 100%. Got to make golf fun, and it's not easy to do sometimes. Like you said, when you're spending all that money and you're not scoring your best. So it sounds like some good mental game stuff. I'm excited to take a look at it myself. Is it on Amazon, the main place?
It is, yeah.
Okay,
So
perfect.
go on Amazon, beat the course, not yourself. Get it, read it. I think it will be one of those really easy books that I want you to reread. And at the end of every chapter, there's some questions that you
Mm,
can personalize that chapter to you. And kind of when you start to put things on paper and verbalize things, it helps you learn a little bit better. That's what I always found when I was learning
hmm.
uh, and learning golf psychology.
Fantastic. Yeah, and then we're gonna get the Audible version out too because you're a great speaker. So
I
we'll
like it, I like the sound of it.
fantastic. For my last question, we talked a lot about the mental game today. What are some, I'm sure you've played in a lot of pro-ams. You've obviously been around the game for, excuse me. I know you've been around the game for 30, 40 years now. What do you feel like is the number one mental game thing that the everyday golfer could easily implement, even if they're not going down the, psychology rabbit hole like we have?
Yeah, I think just have a plan instead of just standing up there and swinging the club and hoping for the best. Just I think now with indoor hitting bays and technology, you can at least have an idea of what your golf swing does.
Hmm.
You can understand if it's a little out to in. You can understand if it's a little in to out. You can understand what the club face does, and so kind of you get the picture of that. And then you kind of see, what your ball flight tends to do, and then you fit that ball flight around the golf course. You don't play par as par. If you're a 15 handicap, a par is bogey.
Hmm.
Uh, I think that there's just too many. There's too many easy ways to just completely ruin what it is that you're capable of doing. I think when you're standing on a 400-yard par four and you hit the ball 200 yards and you're trying to make a par oftentimes makes you make a double because you try and do too much with the second shot, or you try and do too much with the drive because you know you've got to hit it further than you're capable of,
Hmm.
and then you push and try and hit it too much club or have too long of a club in and try and get it all the way to the green, which obviously the longer the club, the harder it is to hit straight and solid. And then you put yourself in another bad position. And all
Hmm.
of a sudden, you make the easiest 60 of your life, where if you'd have played it as a short par five, you would have probably had a pretty good chance of making no worse than a five, and you might have had a little look at a four. But I take people on playing lessons, and
Hmm.
when they've hit it in the woods, I'll have two beer cans filled with sand or concrete or whatever, and say, "Here's your tee marker. Okay, I'm going to put these either side of your ball. You're now playing a 180-yard par four from here, from this point in the trees. Go make me a four from here." So now all of a sudden, instead of them trying to bend a 4 iron under a limb, around a bunker, through trees, and whatever else, they say, "Okay, I've got four shots to get this in the hole from here. Okay, well, maybe this time I'll take it out that big gap there because we work really hard from inside 100 yards. So if I
Hmm.
get inside 100 yards, I got a pretty good chance of hitting the green in three. And then I'll two putt and make my five from the trees, which in normal times I would have made a double or worse. So, I think there's some really easy ways of course management, but I think the biggest thing is to just forget about par if you're a handicap
Hmm.
golfer, because
I
it's
like
not
that.
relevant to you. It's only
Hmm.
relevant to a scratch golfer or a plus golfer.
Yeah, I like that. Kind of reassess the par, right? You got to have a plan. Failure to plan is a plan to fail. I love that. So you have shared so much with us, Gary. I absolutely love your story. Rooting you on, guys. Buy the book. I can't wait to read it. I can't wait to have you back again on the show whenever you want to talk golf. Happy to have you on at Wicked Smart Golf. And just wanted to say thanks again for being here.
Awesome, Mike. I really enjoyed the chat. That was a lot of fun. I'd love to do it again.